Welcome back. The situation at the southern border continues to worsen by the hour. And while the mainstream media meat puppets pretend like it's some incredibly complicated situation, it's really not. Do not let undocumented illegal aliens into the country. Hey, I understand why everyone would want to come to America, right? It's the greatest country in the world. But they need to get in line, just like everyone else. The problem has been allowed to continue for years, decades. But why is that? Well, I'd venture to guess it's because the illegitimate government masquerading as the American government is at war with we the people. It doesn't take a genius to know the best strategists and military minds fully understand large-scale, unchecked mass migration is a national security issue. And yet, it's being encouraged. Here to discuss is Alex Newman, CEO of Liberty Sentinel Media. Alex, thank you so much for being with us today. It's great to see you.
Great to be here. Thank you, Alison.
Well, Alex, Fox News just reported Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says the border looks like Biden cut a deal with cartels. So, I'm glad someone is saying it. At this point, I would say it's pretty obvious the establishment is friendly or at least has a symbiotic relationship with the cartels in Mexico. Would you agree with that? What are your thoughts here?
There's no question at all about it, Alison. In fact, this is a story I've been reporting for almost my entire career in journalism. The connections between the Mexican drug cartels and power brokers at the highest levels in the United States of America are indisputable. They've been there for a very long time. They involve the Central Intelligence Agency, the FBI, some of the most powerful political families in our country, and we have multiple pieces of evidence proving this. Again, this is a story that I've been working on for well over a decade. It's very, very well documented. And then you add Biden to the mix, right? This is a guy who we know has been on the payroll of the CCP, of various oligarchs from Ukraine, Romania, Russia, et cetera. What we're dealing with here is way beyond just corruption. This is a war on our country, and the cartels and the Communist Chinese and all these different players that the Biden administration is working with are absolutely involved.
Yeah, no question about it. It's really just coming to a point here, and it's incredible to watch it all come crumbling down. Now, Congressman Biggs has made a great point that this full-blown invasion violates Article 4, Section 4 of our Constitution, saying the federal government shall protect each state from invasion. More states need to take matters into their own hands. The federal government has failed them, which is what is really going on. But of course, the mainstream media paints the masses of people coming over undocumented as asylum seekers. Why is that?
That's the hoax, right? The United Nations and these various tax-funded non-governmental organizations along the way are telling these invaders what they need to say when they get to the border. Say, I'm scared, I fear for my life, whatever the case is. And before I get deeper into this, I'll point out that I lived most of my life as an immigrant. I grew up in Latin America. I'm married to an immigrant who immigrated to the United States legally. I have no animus whatsoever against immigrants per se. But what we're dealing with here is not even an immigration crisis. This is an actual invasion of our country. It's very deliberate. And what Congressman Biggs pointed out is critical for people to understand. The U.S. Constitution is a contract. It's an agreement. The states came together through this agreement, created an agent, the federal government, and they delegated certain powers and responsibilities to this agent. One of those powers was to defend the border and to defend the states from invasion and to ensure that each one had a Republican form of government. So those are some responsibilities that were delegated to the federal government. When the federal government does not obey its end of the contract, the states, of course, have no obligation to uphold their end. So what we're doing here is we're headed into a very, very dangerous constitutional crisis where the Biden administration is waging war on the states that created the federal government. The proper and correct response here is for the state governments, hopefully acting together, as we're seeing right now with all the Republican states standing behind Texas, to say, look, you're not going to do your job, then we're going to step in and do it. And regardless of what the Supreme Court says in some opinion, we have not just a right to defend our state from an invasion, but an obligation to do so. So Governor Abbott, at least in terms of what he's saying, is exactly right. Congressman Biggs, in terms of what he's saying, is exactly right. We need much more of this. And this is a crisis, folks. This is really, we're talking about an existential threat to our country. It's past time for Republican states to do this, but better late than never.
Yeah, you're right, Alex. Better late than never, but it's sad that it's had to come to this point for action to finally be taken. Now, President Trump has been calling on all willing states to deploy their National Guards to Texas to defend the U.S.-Mexico border. There are currently 25 states now standing with Texas, but how do you ultimately see this playing out, Alex?
Well, I think the Biden administration is, again, waging actual war on our country. And so they're going to try to figure out any way possible to neutralize this threat to their attack on the United States of America. One option that I've already heard being floated in Washington, D.C. is for the Biden administration to come out and try to federalize the National Guards so that they cannot be deployed to defend Texas and other border states and ultimately the country itself from invasion. Fortunately, a lot of states do have their own state guards that cannot be federalized. Texas is one of the states that has that. And we also, of course, have our own state police forces. We've got state troopers. We've got state law enforcement. So there are plenty of resources that the state governments can and must right now deploy to the border. And I think this really raises a bigger point as far as the National Guard, state militias, et cetera. When our country was created, the founding fathers actually were looking at Switzerland as the model for the militia. That model was every man of fighting age is a member of the militia. Every man of fighting age is required to have a firearm and know how to use it so that when we're facing a crisis like this, when we're facing an invasion, everybody can come and help. And I think we need to go back to that system. The whole National Guard thing with the ability of Joe Biden to come in and just federalize it whenever he wants to, that has some serious shortcomings. And this crisis that we're dealing with really exposes those in a major way.
Yeah, spot on, Alex. I mean, it's very frightening to think about our corrupt government coming to save us from anything. I don't know how well that's going to pan out. But yeah, probably best to be prepared on your own and go back to the good old days when men knew how to fight. Now, for anyone doubting this is a literal invasion, I mean, the border states are the front lines. Alex, I want to show you this video from La Jolla, California. Now, this is just right down the street from us here at One America News. This is a beach called Wind and Sea. Mind you, there's a high school and a middle school even just blocks away. It's also right next to Mitt Romney's house, conveniently. As you can see, these people are just crossing with no regard. Apparently, there's children with them, and they're all piling into this van. And as you can see, they just leave their boat wrecked on the shore. I mean, this isn't just a random occurrence, is it? I think it's pretty clear this is calculated. And, you know, this hits really close to home for me, Alex, obviously, because it's right here. Do you think people will finally awaken to the corruption when it comes trampling through their own backyard? I mean, how much longer does this take? How much more do people need to see here?
Yeah, I think we're headed right now very rapidly, Allison, to the breaking point. Now, obviously, some of the border communities are feeling the brunt of this, but Joe Biden, the administration, is putting these illegal immigrants on airplanes and buses, and they are flying them and busing them to communities all over this country. Now, a lot of people haven't noticed yet because they're holed up in a hotel that the taxpayers are paying for. But when the crisis, whatever that may be, hits, whether that be, you know, they take out the power grid for a couple weeks, they take out communications for a couple weeks, you have some major false flag attack. When the crisis hits, it's going to be very obvious what's going on here. And they've got already tens of millions of illegal immigrants across the country. Many of them have no idea, you know, the broader reason why this is happening. But Allison, this is just the start. If we don't get control of this right now, as the World Economic Forum told us just a few years ago, they predicted that by 2030, 1 billion people would be headed toward the Western countries under the guise of climate refugees. Well, look at what's already happened in Europe. A lot of the big cities in Europe, you already have the native population is in the minority. Malmo, Sweden, Frankfurt, Germany, London in the United Kingdom, Brussels in Belgium. You have the native population is now minority in their own major cities. And this is just the start. If we don't get it under control, they're going to send 1 billion people our way, is what they themselves are forecasting. So, folks, now's the time to get control of this before it spirals out of control and we can never reverse it.
Yep, it is now or never, and I don't know how much longer we have, but time to get active, guys. We can't sustain much more of this. Alex Newman, we're out of time for today, but thank you so much for joining us and weighing in. I always appreciate your insight.
Thank you, Allison.
For all our viewers asking where One America News is heading in the future, we would like to introduce you to OAN Live. OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting, national and international headlines. And the best part is, OAN Live is only $4.99 per month. All the credible, honest, unbiased reporting One America News offers at a fraction of the cost of cable. Just go to OANN.com to easily sign up for OAN Live and stay informed.